Hi, so I'm Alexander Lene, I'm French, and I've been here for 10 years. I'm working currently at Gameloft Sofia as the studio lead game designer.
Здравейте, казвам се Ивана Гигова. В момента съм junior level designer в Snapshot Games.
I've worked on many titles there, including Water Arms a few years back. Then we worked on Water Arms 2, which is in fact War Planet Online, which came out like a few years ago. And recently we released Heroes of the Dark for iOS and Android. I've been doing this for 8 years now in Gameloft Sofia, and a bit more like 13 to 14 years as a game designer / producer. I'm doing a bit of both, at least at the beginning of my career. If I can maybe define what game design is, it's a very vast domain, which is including a lot of specialties. But usually in smaller studios, you cannot do all of those things at once. One important note is that game design is not graphic design, which means that you're not going to draw, you're not going to do illustrations, or you're not going to do graphics on its own, but you might be doing some UI in the process. So game design is more about defining the rules, the systems that govern the game, the universe, the different characters. It's a lot of what makes the game as a whole, but a lot of it is focused on the rules of the game. It's a discipline which is involved in a lot of aspects of the game creation. At the beginning, you start with the idea, and it evolves into a documentation phase where you have to explain this idea to everyone, present it, earn the motivation of the team members, and share the vision you have for the game. Later on, you have the development phase where you're going to have to do a bit more of implementation. You're going to add those characters into the universe and link all the departments together to create the product. Talk with the programmers to be able to implement all the systems that you thought about. And once all of this is kind of done and starts to take shape, the latest phase of the production will be to debug all of this and to balance it so that the player has an interesting experience from the beginning to the end. When I say, I'm a game designer, people are like, okay, so what do? You program? And I'm like, no. And you draw? No, I don't draw. And you're like, okay, so what do you do? Because for them, games is just visuals and code. So I try to explain them, I design the rules of the game and how when you press the button, the character jumps. If you press it twice, it double jumps. And suddenly everything becomes clear.
Влизайки в академията, се колебаех между няколко дисциплини. В интерес на истината, нито една от които не беше левел дизайнът, но с течението на първия семестър съвсем натурално просто започнах да се фокусирам все повече върху левел дизайна и накрая това стана нещото, което ми е супер интересно. Всичко ми е интересно от левел дизайна, като цяло от момента, в който започвам да мисля как бих искала да изглежда едно ниво, докато направя paper прототипа, и като че ли любимият ми момент е когато седя, че paper прототипа вече е завършен и вляза в engine и го реализирам в 3D пространството и мога да се разходя в нивото и да разгледам какво всъщност съм измислила и съм направила.
So the important thing is that when you grow into a bigger studio, usually you start to have more specialty, and this includes sometimes things that like system design, level design. You might have some economy design, combat design, and all those specialty are a bit like if you go into a 2D environment as a 2D artist, you start as a generalist and then you maybe end up doing illustration or concept art. This is a bit of the same. For level design, you will basically focus on creating the levels of the game and how the encounters in those levels will take form, create the triggers inside the level, to open doors, to start the boss fight and all those things. If you're doing a bit more of combat design, you will define how the systems work for the combat. So if you're into JRPG, for example, you will have to define how fast the combat will be, what kind of combo you can do. You will do the balancing for all the numbers, so you can see either like 10 points per attack or 10 million points if you're doing a JRPG, for example. You have also some more generic specialty like systems design, which can apply to a lot of other things, including the parts which can be level design and combat design, but it's a bit more englobing. Economy design is very specific to the free-to-play field because we have a lot of different channels from which you can get resource and spend them, so we need sometimes a designer specialized in this. And you're going to do a lot of math and curves and everything, but that can be also very interesting because you're participating actively in creating the experience for the player.
Използвам някакъв онлайн whiteboard, на който да мога да си направя paper прототипа, за да мога лесно да го споделя с колеги, които искат да го видят. Също най-често започвам с прототипизирането на обикновен лист хартия. Доста итеративен процес е. И това всъщност много харесвам в него, е, че правиш нещо, показваш го на някой, той може да го играе, може само да го погледне и да ти каже какво мисли, да го обсъдите, след което да го преработиш и да стане още по-добро. А ако имам да правя едно ниво от нулата, обикновено първо идва идеята, която идея се опитвам да я скицирам много набързо. Всъщност да скицирам няколко вариации на тази идея, как бих си представила, че може да е флоа на самото ниво. След което правя малко по-сериозна и по-техническа рисунка или скица. Не е нещо, кой знае колко сериозно, просто да мога да си представя пространствата, разстоянията и самата композиция на нивото. И след това влизам в енджина. Най-комфортно се чувствам в Unreal и в Unity. След като вече съм в енджина, следват Big Shapes, което значи супер набързо сложени, заградени пространствата, които искам да използвам. Аз се разхождам в нивото, също се случва и да го дам на някой друг, да се разходи, да го погледне, да види как се чувства и след като започна да получавам вече фидбек, гледам възможно най-бързо да го имплементирам. Това някой да се разходи в нивото, да го погледне, да ми даде фидбек и аз самата да го направя, се случва 4, 5, 6 пъти, зависи колко пъти е нужно, че да се получи това, което се очаква да бъде.
Okay, so how to become a game designer, how to put your first foot in the industry and grow from there. That's in fact very open. We have a lot of different designers who came to Gameloft over the years with different backgrounds, and we don't discriminate specifically for one education. You don't need to have, for example, studied specifically game design to become a game designer. You need to be interested in games for sure, and you need to have a bit of an understanding of how a game works. But we have people who came from an architectural background, for example. So they were architects, and they have a good understanding of math and how to build things that last, big projects, and they are passionate about games, and they will basically have a specific mindset which is very pragmatic, very organized. We have people who come from math background. They basically just studied math and statistics, and they like this. We have some guys who were artists or graphic designers who then kind of do a bit more UI, for example, but they also participate a lot in IDs and documentation. Like, we just, depending on your background, you will have affinity with different types of specialty in game design. But what we're looking for usually in a game designer is a mentality, is an approach to things. You like to solve problems. You like to take on challenges, and you have a curiosity for games, and you're very player-centric. You want to entertain the player, you want to create systems or stories that the player will enjoy. Often helps if you have some form of education on top of what you have studied before, if you already have studied something. If you're straight out of high school and you go directly to a game design school, it's awesome because they will teach you all those problem-solving skills and mentality and approach to creating the experience for the player. But if you have done something else for 3 or 4 years and you're like, I want to be doing games, but I've done economy, for example, it's not a blocker. You shouldn't say, I can't do it. The best way, I think, is to go online, get some tutorials about, how to maybe use an engine, like Unreal or Unity or any other engine you feel comfortable with. Work on some small prototype on your own, like try to define a game with a story, a character, make a small platformer, something that you can learn. There's a lot of tutorials on different platforms, like Udemy, for example, or YouTube. Even on YouTube, you can find a lot of resources for that. And you can make a small game, twinkle with it a bit, like try to change the parameters, try to create a few levels, depending on what you like the most. If you like to do combat and you want to learn to do this, like make a nice little 1 versus 1 combat. If you like to make levels, try to get a 3D environment from a store or somewhere and just lay out things and create interesting levels and reuse mechanics that are already existing. Most of the engines come with predefined third-person templates. You just have to load it and then you can move around. So what matters here is, even if you have an education which is not game design, you have to kind of, get some information from those tutorials, from those resources, and then you have to demonstrate in a portfolio your understanding of games and how you can create an experience for the player, because that's what's important. Okay, so if I can give you 3 tips for creating a game design portfolio, I guess I would go, first of all, orient your portfolio into the thing you want to do at the end. So if you're into level design and you want to do levels and you want to apply to a company that has very story focused and level design focused philosophy, like Naughty Dog, for example, you should really analyze how they do things and play their games, see how they approach the concept of their levels, and try to replicate this and possibly propose something extra, something on top, your own little touch. In the portfolio, you should show the process, your thinking process. You should never just show, hey, this is my final result. You should always show, this is the idea I had, this is how I evolved it, this is how I basically iterated on it, and then this is the final result I have. And if possible, if you even have the ability for that, make a link to a downloadable version where you can get the game and test the level, like the recruiter can test the level by himself. So it's a lot about how you think, because as a junior, as someone who starts industry, we're curious about how you approach things, not the skills you have, because most of the time you don't have that many skills, because a lot of those skills are learned through either the 2 or 3 years of school or 2 or 3 years on the field. So it's a lot about this. If you're interested into systems design and combat design, for example, the same thing applies here more or less. You should try to explain how the systems can work together. Another approach, instead of doing something from scratch, you can also deconstruct something. So you can, for example, analyze the combat of, I don't know, God of War, and you explain why the combat is so cool, what elements of it makes it interesting. If you're into fighting games, you take Street Fighter and another fighter, and you compare what makes it different, why one is, Tekken is so slow and precise, and Street Fighter is a bit more aggressive, and you try to compare those and you explain your understanding of the game, so your understanding of the genre of games you want to make. And what's important in your portfolio is that it should be clear, it should be concise, and it should show your ambition, what you want to do on the long run, if possible, what you're interested and passionate about, the kind of games you play, and especially this little project that explains your thought process from A to Z. That's really important. And through this, if you structure it properly, if you just not have a white page with text, if you spend some time on the web design itself, maybe get help from someone who knows how to arrange the website better or make embedded videos here and there. The goal is to show how you can communicate things, because in game design, a lot of the work is about communicating with other departments, other people outside the field that don't really know how you think, and you have to make everyone understand what you have in your mind in a simple manner. So presentation is important, and it should be straight to the point. It should show your character and your ambition without being over ambitious. You shouldn't say like, I want to be the next Miyamoto or something like that, but you should try to show that you're very interested in it.
Мисля, че много важно умение, което един левел дизайнер трябва да има, е това да може да получава критика, да я приема добре и всъщност, когато я получи, да може да я имплементира в нивото си, така че да се получи оптимално добър продукт накрая.
The main goal behind me joining the game design team and doing this job on a daily basis is because I want to give to players or to people in general. I love to give happiness to people. I like to entertain them. I like to have people having a good time. So games is a perfect thing for that. It's interactive. People can create their own story with it. They can take what you created, the little systems you made, and they can just try to figure out how they work and have those haha moments if you're doing a puzzle, or those very engaging adventures if they're playing an adventure game, a platformer game. And this is the thing I like. I like to see people play my games, especially. So I can't see everyone obviously play my games because we have millions of players all around the world. But when I see some friends playing it, or I can see the testers or the people of the team play it and have a smile on their face. So yeah, being able to mentor people, to teach young people about game design and how to become a game designer, to grow in this field and to have more people expressing their ideas it's a reward on its own. It's very rewarding.